No.
Is it digital?
Yeah.
It'll work eventually.
It should have loaded by now.
I know. I'll get my phone as well. Hold on.
Yeah, but this is better sound quality, Ola.
It's fine now.
It's fine, Ola. Oh, for fuck's sake.
There. It is recording.
Okay, sweet.
Yes.
Ola's just gonna go get his phone.
What is he getting his?
I have no idea.
I was interviewed by that radio journalist just a while ago. She used this.
Good for her.
What are you?
This is
Oh my god, I can't remember. Oh, there it is. Okay.
This is
So I can just put it down, right?
If you like, yep.
Okay.
You can put it in your pocket if you. Oh no, it'll be crumbled.
See what's better.
right.
Okay, so we're here.
The absurdity is actually that.
Yeah, it's really nice. Okay, we're here with an interview with Mike Bonanno and Ola Johansson at the Sugarcube Gallery in Stockholm. What date is it? 16th of December?
Yes.
Sweet.
it is.
Okay.
I'm going to start with a really simple question to Mike, and that is, what's your relationship to institutional critique?
Well, if you look at the planet as an institution, or more, maybe if you look at capitalism as an institution, then that's what we do, institutional critique. Governments, corporations, they're all institutions. They need to be critiqued. We haven't been concentrating on museums and the art world because it doesn't seem like it's the big problem. It's not really even the problem. So that's why we haven't really. Yeah, I think generally when people in an art context talk about institutional critique, they think about critiquing art institutions, but it seems a bit myopic. Because why bother? There's so many much more nasty institutions to choose if you're in the business of criticism.
But you must get involved in, these debates about exactly this so many times.
About institutional critique?
Well, the applicability of radical art, because most art, as far as I can see, maybe not theater, but art is really preoccupied with institutions.
That's true. And a lot of times we get email from, let's say, for example, an art magazine that says, urgent, we need you to do an interview right now. And we have that kind of response where we sort of, we're not sure whether to laugh or cry, because it's not really urgent. There are lots of urgent things going on in the world, but needing to do an interview for an art magazine because they're on deadline doesn't really, doesn't fit into that. Our parameters for what's usually considered urgent. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but maybe obliquely it does.
Yeah, but you still have an institution yourself that you work in, and I kind of wonder, what is the collegial kind of situation with, is it a radical institution?
No, our institution isn't. I mean, we have a small non-profit organization, the Yes Lab, and the reason that we formed a non-profit is because that way we could legally accept donations from people and they could use it as a tax write-off. And also we would be immune to certain kinds of criticism that we might otherwise be subject to, like people accusing us of doing it for profit or doing, it just pretty standard, because if you make movies and that kind of thing, people perceive you to be doing really well financially. So, we wanted to, in some ways, inoculate ourselves against that. But the organization itself, I mean, the way we operate is fairly standard for a small nonprofit organization. There is sort of hierarchy, although we've been trying to experiment with other models, and in many ways inspired by the way the Occupy Wall Street folks are, organizing non-hierarchically, consensus-based. I mean, doing it with large numbers of people, and consensus-based decision-making with large numbers of people is notoriously difficult.
Yeah.
But it is interesting what results you get in the process that you go through doing it. So, we're interested in...
What about the educational institution you work at? What is it?
That?
Yeah. Is that radical or?
No. The educational institution that I work at is they're called Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, and they're an engineering school. I mean, they were founded as an engineering and sciences school, and they're definitely not radical. It's pretty straightforward stuff. But like any big institution, they end up with things that are part of them that they don't necessarily know about until it's too late. So I already got tenure before they really knew what I was doing. So.
I don't know about the art world in America, because you don't hear so much about it, but in Europe certainly you have had a gravitation towards participation. But a very, very meek strands of participation as well. But I wonder if you see that as a paradigmatic kind of drift right now in America as well, or wherever you go. And what do you think of participation as art?
Right. I like it. I always feel like participatory practices or cultural activities that people can join in on are much more exciting for people than sitting back and watching. And I think that, there's definitely a move in that direction right now. I don't know. I don't know if it's happening really so much in the art world, but I would say that there are artists, quite a few of them, who are going in that direction, regardless of or in spite of what might be happening in the art world.
Are you accused of not being an artist?
Yeah, sure. We're also accused of being artists.
Yes.
It goes both ways. Especially in the world of activism.
Yeah.
There are people who
who
will really, take issue with. I'm sure that among we had participation from people who were part of the, Occupy Stockholm. But I'm sure that there was probably some more radical Occupy Stockholm people who were shaking their heads and saying, why was he speaking at the Modern Museum? He should be coming down and speaking in the People's Assembly,
Like in the 60s or 70s.
Yeah.
Participation in Europe has been tied into what they call, at least in the UK, educational turn. So it's kind of a democratization, I guess, of the art world that's going on in galleries and stuff like that. I take this educational tack now because Amanda is inclining towards that. When it comes to pedagogy, have you had an explicit interest in coming up with pedagogical models for the Yes Lab in order to optimize participation? In applied theater, for example, we rely a lot on Paulo Freire, that kind of gradual build-up of a group of people that kind of go from sporadic ideas into more consolidated actions where they try to find ways to assimilate physical action with reflection.
Yeah. I think we've been working on coming up with sort of curricula. Working on coming up with methods and drawing from some of the, from whatever is available that seems like it works. I don't know. I guess I don't have an answer.
What was the question?
Whether they have a pedagogy, explicit pedagogy. Because my lack of pedagogy, I'm not going to go into me, but devising is such a weird thing. It's a collaborative creation that you surely get into as well. When people contribute with whatever direct experiences they have, aesthetic preferences, political convictions, you just bring them together. Yeah. And some people, of course, have really immaculate kind of pedagogical models in order to compose.
Right. No, see, at the moment we have more like methodology. We have methods that we follow and we try to use to get at a result, but we don't actually have a kind of set pedagogy.
No. What about Hanshake? No, people in the art world like Andrea Fraser and those guys. Do you hang out with them? No, not hang out. Are you inspired by people?
Make love to them.
No, she's making love to her dealer, right? That's a no.
That was it's an exchange,
That was an art.
Not her dealer, a customer.
Yeah. Hans Hacke and those people in New York? Cooper Union?
Oh yeah, Hans Hacke. Yeah, we do know Hans Hacke.
Yeah.
We had lunch with him last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did he say about you?
What did he say about us?
Yes.
Well, he didn't say anything about us because he was talking to us. It'd be a little awkward, wouldn't it? It's like, you guys are such assholes. I was telling someone the other day how much of an asshole you guys were, or whatever, So no, we had a nice conversation, but he does like what we do, and we like what he's done, and I think we wanted to pick his brain a little bit,
Yeah.
and kind of try to, because he's done really great stuff. So yeah.
What does he think of that notion of institutional critique when it's applied to his practice? Can you ask Mike that, Ola?
Or what does he think of institutional critique when it's applied to his practice? It's Andrea Fraser's term, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so when it's attributed to Hans Hacke's practice. Does Mike know that?
About what? What
Hans Hacke thinks about being subject to that term.
Oh no, I don't know what Hans Hacke thinks about being subject to that term. No, but I mean, if I was subjecting that term to Hans Hacke's work, which I would, I would think that it's I think that especially Hans Hacke has made great institutional critique projects at a time when they were really needed, when not that many people were thinking about where the money came from for the asparagus on the painting on the wall. That's that kind of thing. I think Hans Hacke has done incredibly well.
May I ask, what other artistic connections do you have on the, let's say, East Coast? I was interested in language poetry, for example, Charles Bernstein and those guys. I think some of them are up in Buffalo, some of them are in New York, Philadelphia as well. Bob Perelman is a guy I really found interesting politically. Mm-hmm. We have very few political poets here, but in America I found some. Do you have any connections with the language poets or so?
Not so much myself, but Andy does.
Oh yes, okay.
He used to. He started out as a writer, experimental fiction, and so he has a degree in that, and so he knows a lot of the people who are doing experimental fiction and poetry.
Right.
But
I can't talk about that because I don't have his brain here.
No, but what I'm interested in also is this idea of like framing, deciding that something is something.
Yeah.
So So can you ask Mike a question about Andrea Fraser as kind of framing that practice as institutional critique from within the art world? And because Hans Hacker didn't call it institutional critique in the way that people talk about it in the art world as being, she sort of it almost aligns it as something that's inside a system, almost as if you need to have those kind of artistic privileges or knowledges in order to be able to understand the problematic of it actually being an artistic practice. So it's almost like a consuming and naming and framing of
well,
this.
Hans Hacker could almost be
I'm not sure how well that sits with
grasped by
him.
anybody outside the art institutions as well, right? Some of his work. I don't know. But the frame is extraordinary because we don't, as I told you, we don't have too much media in our art, so it's very timely your visit actually. The frame in America, the frame analysis of a lot of people, sociologists like Goffman and Marshall McLuhan in media, and a lot of other people in art, as opposed to Europe, you thought much more about the framework. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to formulate this question, but it's very relevant. Oh my God. How much of the work you're doing is hinging on the frame rather than the subject matter or the old questions and answers?
It all hinges on both.
Yeah. Yeah.
But a lot of what we do is reframing things, repackaging ideas that are already out there, and then presenting them in a way that catches people's eye. It's storytelling, but storytelling, it's not like the stories that we're telling are different or new. I just, as an example, I talk about when we went on the BBC and announced that Dow Chemical was going to be cleaning up the mess in Bhopal and spending $11.9 billion compensating the victims and fixing that situation. That was, in a sense, it was reframing what was already out there, because that was, what the victims were already asking for. They're asking for the site to be cleaned up. And everybody already knew about this situation. It wasn't like it's been around for 25 years.
Yeah, it's a perfect example.
Yeah, so it's just it's about creating a different context, a different lens through which to view that situation.
And what do you think about it when those kinds of lenses become institutionalized?
Oh gosh.
I guess that's happened to many radical movements.
Ola, can you ask a question about that?
They're eaten up by their own strategizing. As soon as they become recognized and used in more and more conventional ways, they tend to lose power as well, or efficaciousness or so.
Yes, I think that it is possible for a thing to be sort of co-opted, or if a device or a way of framing something becomes co-opted or used enough in the wrong way, then you have to come up with a new way of looking at it, because it becomes the standard then, right? It's like, yeah.
What did I have here? I had one. Oh, yeah. On that note, are you kind of annoyed by being compared to Michael Moore and the likes?
No, not really, because I think that people like Michael Moore are doing interesting projects, and it is kind of I don't know, I consider it to be an honor in a way rather than annoying, because Michael Moore has made the largest grossing documentary films of all time. I think it helps people try to understand something about what we're doing. If somebody says that it's Michael Moore or it's like Borat. Borat also, like, everybody knows Borat because he just had a massive movie with Sacha Baron Cohen. Yeah. And what we're doing isn't really that. but it gives it's like a hint, you know, it helps. And I did actually laugh my ass off at poor guy. I really liked it.
I thought it was interesting actually what he did.
Yeah.
His brother or cousin, he's in conflict research at Cambridge University, and I read an essay by him, and I still can't figure out who's in regard to conflicts.
Right.
You know, Borat or his cousin at Cambridge University. I think, and that leads me to the next question.
That's pretty funny. I didn't know that.
But he's interested in relation to psychology and gender as well, and biology.
Yeah, I know they spell it out right, but what you get from
so it's
Borat,
somehow different.
tacitly and
it's very
implicitly,
scientific
is
approach.
that true?
Yeah.
Oh,
You
yeah,
just
yeah.
have to come up with the interpretation
Psychology,
yourself.
gender.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You just
yeah.
have to do
He takes it on in a much more interesting
But that
way.
has to do with participation. You have to do much more interpretive work yourself instead of reading every word
Right.
that the investigation has actually, you know.
Yeah.
I just want to ask, Ola, can you ask a question coming back to this idea of pedagogy? Can you ask Mike a question about hierarchy in institutions with like students and teachers and notions of like how does pedagogy relate to hierarchy? Is there anything in teaching in relation to, I mean, how does Mike deal with it? Do you want to ask him something about that?
Power and hierarchy and pedagogy.
Yeah, well, you know, having a group in front of you and stuff.
Oh yeah,
Students.
you must have so many admirers, and that's a
I'm not talking about admirers, but students. Oh, yeah, okay,
Yeah,
that kind of thing. But students, like, do you think about power relations? Something like that. You can ask them a question
how
like
do
that.
you cope with power relations in a teaching situation or a yes lab situation where you go up against young people who kind of admire what you do?
And can you ask him a follow-up question about experimental pedagogy? Like what could be considered experimental at the moment or something like that? Experimental pedagogy. Afterwards. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose how do you deal with it? You just deal with it. That's how. How relationships. Well, one of the things I guess that's maybe solved a lot of this problem is that most of the students who come to school where I teach don't know anything about the Yesman. They don't know
Okay.
They've like gone to suburban high school somewhere, and some of them do. There's a few, but not many. And so there isn't really they don't really have any particular idea about who the professor is coming in. It's not like it's different. I think at an art school, for example, like if I was teaching in a place like I used to teach at Cal Arts, then there would be a very different relationship because
But
the
they
students
knew-
would come
they
in.
knew.
What's that?
They knew who you
Yeah, they would know. Yeah. So that was a bit different. And then, there's always like, but you just have to presume that what they're interested in primarily, or what you should be delivering, is the best education that you can. And then stick to the plan.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
But what would that be? I mean, what is good education? I'm kind of curious about what that is. I don't know.
Well, I think it differs for different students. Some students just like already know how to do everything, and they don't
Or
know.
to say anything, right?
What's that?
Or to say anything. They have a lot of vocabularies from intellectual readings and stuff.
Yeah. Like some students need to read more. Some students need to write more. Most of them need to write more.
Yeah.
Most of them need to learn how to write. That's the most important thing usually.
Yeah.
And then some of them need to learn how to do make things. But for some reason, there's a lot of it's like you get the sense that the best students are the ones who already know that kind of like they know what they're good at. They've already gotten good at those things, and they can keep adding those skills as need be. And then it's like encouraging them to follow their dreams and to follow like good ideas instead of bad ideas. So trying to tease out what they're doing and trying to help them find their way.
Yeah.
That's what it becomes then for the best students. For the worst ones, it's trickier because then it's like encouraging them to learn more. and trying to, you know, and in some ways, like the school that I teach at has very like rigid curriculum. You know, students expect regular testing. If they don't get it, they freak out. You know, they lose it because they don't know what their grade's going to be, and they're really worried about that. So, for a lot of those students who are not in the top, 10%, the best education for them actually conforms to their expectations so that they don't freak out. Like, so you have to give them tests so that they study and learn the stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I found anyway. But it's different. Yeah, it's like.
When it comes to the Yes Lab situation, I was very impressed by you were tired that day, but still you had you had a sense of where we were going in our discussions in the brainstorming session, and it struck me that it's almost like a composition in music. It shouldn't be too harmonic. It shouldn't be too atonal from the start, but there got to be some kind of interesting composition coming together. I mean, especially if you work from inside a corporation's own modes of communicating and stuff like that. You can't come too close and you can't get too far away. Do you sense in your way of teaching or leading a workshop that I want to ask about the experimental pedagogy here, but it's not a straightforward learning curve either.
No.
It's really an experimental mode of taking on something.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of what we do, since it's meant to be project-based, or project-led learning in a way, or action-led learning.
Yeah.
It can go really well, or it can go really badly too.
Yeah.
It's not like, if you have a set curriculum and it's very straightforward and there's certain knowledge that people are going to gain in the process, that can be much more predictable. But this is a little bit more kind of up in the air, because you can show a bunch of it. Like, typically what we do is show examples, brainstorm, and then talk about how the project managed so that things can get done. That's like in a nutshell, that's it. So it's like methods for making sure that a thing can happen.
Yeah.
And often, and then along the way, there's all these tasks that people learn as they do them. Like, if somebody writes a press release, in the revisions, they learn how to write the press release. As the first time they write it, they rewrite it. So,
yeah,
it is a little bit experimental. Just like the
Yes, its application is actually spatial temporal. I mean, you go out there, and anything can happen once you're out there. You have to have so many mishaps as well when you go out and implement something. Right?
Yeah, and any project, can be different.
Yeah, it's like a composition of. It's like a total situation that you need to manage. It's much more than a control setting like a studio or a gallery.
Right.
Yeah. And speaking of that, you told us that the research is, they really place the emphasis on it has to be absolutely right, it has to be substantial, it has to be correct. Are you referring mostly to journalistic research, like you checking the facts and the official figures and so on, or are you also referring to academic research?
I'm mostly talking about the journalistic research.
Yeah.
I mean, when it comes to the types of actions that we do, it's very important that accuracy is maintained whenever the fiction is revealed. Because we use a lot of fiction to get to a destination that's filled with fact. But if the fact is wrong, then you're fucked.
Yes.
So that's what I meant by that.
Okay, and can you ask Mike a question
What
about
time is it, Amanda?
3:15.
Okay.
Can you ask Mike a question about what he thinks of, like, how he identifies art? Like, how does he
Identify
understand
art?
Yeah.
How do you identify art?
What is it, really?
Does it mean a lot to you, art?
Art? Well, sure.
Monet?
Monet. Yes, Monet. And Degas.
Yes.
And there's a movie theater called Cinema Art in my hometown. Good art. It's been closed for a really long time. Anyway, I think that I think that, what is art? What is it? It's communication, it's human expression. And so I think it's important. Now, whether we give it a big capital A or not, whether we put it on a pedestal, or consider it to be participatory or something that is embedded in culture that we're all creating, is a different story, and it's kind of up for grabs, But I think for us too, one of the things that we have to deal with regularly is whether or not it's advantageous to use the word art, or to talk about art. In the United States, it often doesn't help to bring up art, because if you mention it, then people immediately put you in the category of a watercolorist.
Yeah.
And at best, or at worst, they just consider that you're a heathen who's putting Christ on the cross in a pile of urine or something. Because that's what the culture wars are about, and they're very successful in dividing people. So it's often, if you're trying to reach people, then calling yourself an artist is useless in the United States. So we come up with other terms to describe what we do there very often. But then in Europe, there's still, in many countries in Europe, there's still great respect for art and for culture, and in that case, sometimes it's great to be an artist, because if you're an artist, then often people actually want to talk to you or want to listen because an artist is speaking, which is, it's just a different context. So I'd argue that it's also flexible. It means different things in different places.
I can pose a question, right? Do you think, I'll do it anyway. Do you think that art becomes inevitably, since the mid-19th century, more democratic, progressively more democratic, and that is what you're doing is this fear of that?
Well, it does seem like it has become more democratic. I mean, although one could argue that there's always been whatever indigenous forms of art practice that were open to anybody. But the institution of art, definitely has become more open and more democratic, because, obviously, you don't have to be an atelier painter to do an oil painting or something, whereas, 300 years ago, nobody was going to be oil painting unless you went and joined the ranks of the oil painters and enrolled in a program when you were, 12, I don't know. How young did you start in somebody's, workshop? Anyway, regardless, it was something for the the entertainment of the wealthy, and in some ways, with the leveling, the post-industrial revolution world, it's just got to be much more accessible. But I think that there's always been a lot of ephemeral practices that have all kinds of people have engaged in creative practices that just don't exist in the historical record. It just became erased.
Are you preoccupied by being a ephemeral fringe radical and so forth. Is it important to you
To be a French radical?
Fringe.
I was gonna say, how did you know? I am French. I thought they disguised my accent. Oh, oui.
I'm not sure how to formulate this, but
preoccupied with being.
but you're certainly not mainstream. But
Right.
what's happening? Where are you on the radar?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that we're a blip. We're a little blip somewhere on the radar of, we're obviously not dangerous enough for the government to care enough to overtly, come after us. So, how radical are we really? I don't know. But we definitely I did try to use radical's a funny word. I tried to use it recently for the name. We had a couple of faculty. We decided that we wanted to rename our area, which was called the video area. We're like, we don't teach video, none of us do video. We know how to make videos, but it doesn't describe what we do at all.
Yeah.
So we decided we want to be called the radical media area. And we got so much objection. People freaked the fuck out.
Yeah.
Which was interesting. So, I don't know.
It's a Bill O'Reilly term as well, of course,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Radicals. Yeah, 60s radicals.
Yeah.
Terrorists.
Oh my god, I had one. I'm not sure. We have to go very soon.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Wait. Hang on, can you just finish the script?
Yeah, we have 3 minutes, Amanda.
Okay, can you ask a question about, say, someone like Eric Rigoff, who's become...
Do you know her?
She's sort of like a superstar academic
Yes,
in the UK, and she has sort of proposed this notion, which has kind of come from Andrea Fraser's framing of institutional critique, and talking about how it should be within the art world, or artists should have some kind of agency or understanding in order to recognize things as art. So I'm just kind of... Eric Rigoff seems to have kind of abolished that notion of art as having the fundamental role, in a way. She's kind of offered this other...
Danto said the same thing.
Yeah, of course. A lot of people, there's a lot of references that are made directly and not directly.
So she's saying you don't have to have those references?
No, I don't know. No, it's not really about that. But she is actually creating systems of understanding, or talking about the curatorial turn or the educational turn in relation to this idea of an open pedagogy, which has become systematized for the gallery as a way of kind of ticking the institutional boxes, in a way, right? Because she's
working in galleries.
Not so much. We occasionally do show stuff in galleries, yeah.
But I'm just interested in this in relation to practice. If someone's offering a solution that talks about educating the other, because if you take Foucault, for example, and look at the periphery, like what's inside and what's outside, and think about trying to have inclusion policies, these have been used very instrumentally in institutions in order to stabilize funding and things like that. So I think it's kind of interesting to think about this in relation to what Eric Rigoff proposes in this educational turn, which is essentially something that kind of doesn't give the practice the ability to speak for itself.
Is it quarter past now?
It's 1/2
Shit, we
And
have to
also,
go. We have to go.
okay, but
No.
my interview's over. No, it's it is 1/2. It's true.
How did it go? Good? I'll let you know if we have something on the disturb.
Okay. Oh my god, I can't have this jacket, but then we'll go.
Why can't you have the jacket, Ola?